He has an art gallery in Tel Aviv and in New York.
Okay, you're live. It's such an inviting message out this morning. People are just...
Okay, we were holding in Siman Reish Mem Tes 249 as we're going through the different chapters in Shulchan Aruch
Shabbos
from the beginning, Hilchos Shabbos, and we were up to, so after we went through almost the most difficult and complex chapters in Hilchos Shabbos, from chapter 243 to chapter 248, which discussed the Mir L'Nachri, different, having a joint business with a Gentile, and various laws of the like, which, as I'm sure you noticed, and all those present noticed, was difficult. It wasn't easy. It's complex stuff. At the very least, we know that a lot of these issues, if they ever come up, especially if you run a business, require shilas and research to verify whether and how it can be done in a kosher manner, so you can make kosher money. We discussed our last chapter before the holidays, 248, discussed ships, mainly ships, but we also attach that modern day form of travel to aviation as well as train travel. And we explained the various halachic issues involved traveling over Shabbos, and when it can be avoided, the times that we are lenient to allow it to be done, etc. So 249 is now beginning more of a relaxed section of halachas until 253. 253, we once again start churning up the brain. We get to more complex activity. 249, 250, and 251 deal with Erev Shabbos laws, and that's mainly based on this book, meaning this book is based on those halachas, those chapters, the laws and customs of Erev Shabbos. And we're going to begin inside. Siman Reish Mem Tes Sif Aleph in the Mechaber. The first halacha deals with traveling on Erev Shabbos. Put it up here. It discusses traveling limitations. We're going to learn that even though Erev Shabbos is obviously not yet Shabbos, and technically you can say, well, I can do whatever I want till sunset, right? It's not Shabbos yet. Nonetheless, there are certain restrictions that the Chachamim placed even on Erev Shabbos itself. And one of those restrictions regarding traveling. You can't travel to wherever you want, to whatever distance you desire on Erev Shabbos. What's the reason? Why do you think the sages have put a restriction on your traveling rights on Erev Shabbos? Of all days, Erev Shabbos, when everybody travels, that's when you're going to put restrictions.
You might not get there until you get ready.
So that's what everybody says, but that is not the reason why.
One of the reasons.
No, let's read it inside. Sif Aleph. Ein hochem Erev Shabbos is megilum parsayis kadesh yagir lebeisai beida yom gadol v'yichol la'achin tzarich chesed Shabbos. It is forbidden for one to travel on Erev Shabbos more than 3 parsayis. 3 parsayis is the following. Parsa is a Lashon HaKodesh, is a Hebrew distance, which is actually debated exactly what it is, but the bottom line is as follows. We consider every parsa to contain 4 mil, not mile, mil. It's another Hebrew distance term. So 3 times 4, right? There's 4. We said 3 parsayis. There's 4 mil in every parsa. That's 12. So in essence, it's saying you can't travel 3 parsayis, you can't travel 12 mil. Now, how much is a mil? So that's a debate if it's 18 or 24 minutes. If we follow the 24-minute approach, which is the leaning ruling of the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch, chapter 459, then it ends up being 4 hours and 48 minutes. Right? We do 12 times 24. So it's 4 hours and 48 minutes, meaning, listen to what we just said. The Mechaber is saying, it's forbidden on Erev Shabbos to travel more than 4 hours and 48 minutes, And then he says, why? In order so you get home while it's still day with enough time to prepare the Shabbos meal. That's the reason. Not because we're afraid you're going to come late, but in order so you have enough time to prepare the Shabbos meal.
Enough time. That's also that's a worry of being too late to prepare the Shabbos meal.
Correct. That's a worry.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's too late.
Okay. Okay.
I remember learning this before.
Yes, but the reason is not because that you may end up traveling on Shabbos, because you may not have your meal prepared. Now, let me ask you guys a question. It sounds like the way it's written, this halacha,
that you're going back home.
Well, let's just finish reading it. Whether he's going to his house or he's going to another person's house, all these laws apply. You have the 4-hour, 48-minute limitation. You can't travel more than that time to get to your destination on Erev Shabbos.
Why would you be concerned about
Which would mean if you need to get home for Shabbos and it takes you 5 hours, then you got to already start 12 minutes of your journey on Thursday. So you're only going to travel less than 4 hours and 48 minutes. So he says, he puts a stipulation over this limitation is only when you are in a yeshuv, which is a settlement, a place where there are people. And you can prepare your Shabbos food there. So what are you traveling for? In other words, we're afraid you're going to end up getting no Shabbos food because the area you're in, you could technically prepare Shabbos food. You're leaving there, so you're not going to have it anymore. You may not get to your place of destination on time to prepare your Shabbos food, so you may not have Shabbos food. However, if in your current area, there's no kosher food available, so you can't anyways, have a Shabbos meal there. Or but tuach, or it's dangerous. Your car broke down in the middle of Brownsville. Or Chicago, in many neighborhoods. Is it permitted to walk even many parsais of distance without limitation until you reach a place? And that makes obvious sense because the whole reason is because you may not have what to eat. Well, here you're definitely not going to have what to eat, and here you may not even have your body left because it's a dangerous place. So go. If a person informed his destination that he's going to arrive there on Shabbos, they're coming for Shabbos, then there are no restrictions at all. So we said a lot of things here, and we need to detail them, especially in the Achreinim, the Alter Shulchan Aruch. He gives a lot more details into this restriction. So first of all, let's just take a look at the wording. If I wake up at 11 o'clock in the morning, daven Shacharis till 1 o'clock, get ready to leave, it's already 2 o'clock, Shabbos starts at 4. How does it make sense that I'm allowed to travel, and a person who woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, we tell him, oh, you can't travel more than 4 hours and 48 minutes. So the answer is it doesn't make sense. And that's not the pshat. That's not
what do you mean? He has to get there before Chatzos?
I'll recap for you. We stated in the Shulchan Aruch, chapter 249, that there are traveling restrictions on Erev Shabbos.
Right.
And the restrictions is that you can't travel, you have to travel with enough time so you get to your destination with enough time to prepare your Shabbos meals. Which is, and the sages didn't just say it like that, they gave us a time. You can't travel more than 4 hours and 48 minutes. So I'm asking a question. The way the law is worded, if this was like a parliamentary rule, it would be, which many are, it would be very strange. The law doesn't make sense. The law should state that you have to arrive by your destination by a certain time. Not who cares how long it takes you to travel, because now we're allowing a loophole in the law that you can wake up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, travel an hour, you get to your place at 4, shki is at 4:30, but he didn't travel 4 hours and 48 minutes, so it's okay. Well, the guy who woke up at 6, we tell him he can't go. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. So the answer is that the Alter Rebbe and the other Achreinim clarify this ruling in the Mechaber and say, it's true it doesn't make sense, and what it really means to say is the following, that once morning begins, the clock begins. You have 4 hours and 48 minutes to reach your destination. Doesn't matter what time you wake up. The clock is ticking from morning. So if we wake up at 10 o'clock and morning start at 6 o'clock, you have 48 minutes to get to your destination.
So the person at 2 can't do the travel.
No, he's way past the time. Even if the traveling is only 10 minutes away.
Wow.
1 second, there's a few details here. That's the way they explain it in the theoretical idea, okay, of the halach. However, there are a number.
If you go to be a guest by somebody where you don't have to do anything, just show up.
How do you know they prepared enough food for you?
That's the
whole thing. That's the example.
What do you mean? It's my mother. She prepares enough food for me.
So it doesn't matter, even if you're sure that you would be, if your family.
This is the decree. So let's not, there are a number of heterim, okay? There's actually going to be, we're going to go through a list of 4 heterim, and when we're done with the heterim, it's almost like, so where is this law applicable? So we're going to have to then find where this law is applicable. No, the case it's applicable, it's a common case, especially here in Tzfat, and the people have to be aware of the halacha, many people are not. So let's go through the different exceptions that are brought in. We'll just read the side. One must reach his Shabbos destination prior to 48 hours and 48 minutes having passed from the beginning of the day. So as you see, I already put in that stipulation in the halacha here, having passed from the beginning of the day. That's how the Alter writes it.
What's the definition?
Oh, that's a great question, and the poskim that discussed when is the beginning of the day. If your clock is starting, you have 4 hours, 48 minutes. It's a very important question.
It's not Olas Shachar.
But the Pri Megadim says it's Olas Shachar. And if you go to the Rebbe's Olas Shachar, by the time sunrise arrives, you already have 2 hours gone. So the Tzeitzah Shulchan, famous Chabad Pesach, Rabbi Chaim, no, he leaves this matter in question. Let's just say those who are lenient to start the clock from sunrise have upon whom to rely. Okay?
Sunrise. Okay.
Yeah. But bottom line is that we're going to learn the 4 exceptions and just use them instead of needing to push against the law. Just use the exceptions, which are clear. Well, we'll get to them in a minute. This is due to concern that if he arrives later than the above time, there will not be enough time for food for him for Shabbos. Meaning either he won't have enough time for food, or if he's a king, he doesn't do any work. He's a prince, so the family does work for him. They won't have enough time to prepare. This applies even if one is traveling for Shabbos to his own family. We read that inside the Mechaber. Even if you travel, he says it doesn't make a difference if it's your house or someone else's house. That's the Torah, the Mechaber, everyone agrees to that. As we are worried that perhaps they do not know at all that he is arriving, will thus not have prepared food for him. This applies whether one is traveling by foot, horse, caravan. Notice how Rambam was talking about walking, right? That's what it says, leilech. And the wording over there, ein holchin. But it's not, it really doesn't matter if you're walking by foot. The idea is this is the time that you have from morning. So it doesn't matter how you're traveling. And thus, in other words, we don't say that you cannot, in other words, this is coming to be lenient, this clarification. Because you may come along and say, and this is when I first learned, this is how I understood it, that you have 4 hours and 48 minutes of walking time. So if I can do that in a car in a half hour, I only have a half hour of car time. No, that's not the explanation. That's not the understanding. The understanding is you have 4 hours and 48 minutes from the beginning of the day, irrelevant of your form of travel. You want to travel by spaceship and go across the globe. It's your decision, whatever you want. Lest you not have enough time for food. Okay. In the following case.
Is the same idea.
Correct. So you can, yes, there is no prohibition taking flight in Erev Shabbos, but once again, you have the restriction. You have to arrive by 4 hours and 48 minutes into the day, unless you follow one of the exceptions. So what are the exceptions? There are 4 exceptions. We read 2 of them in the Mechaber, 2 of them the Alter Rebbe adds, based on previous poskim.
You already heard the 2 from the Mechaber?
Well, we're going to do it again.
Okay.
We're doing all 4 now. Number 1. This is what Mechaber said. This was the last thing he said that we read inside in Sif Aleph. You informed your guest. You sent him a message. You informed your host, sorry. You informed your family. You tell them, by the way, I'm coming for Shabbos. You're out. The law doesn't refer to you. The law here refers to a surprise show up. You talk about people preparing enough food. Just yesterday, there was a bar mitzvah that was made by the artist colony minion over here. And there were like 50 random people that showed up. And the Baal Simcha didn't have room for himself.
Right, there's a whole bunch of people from this shul came that he wasn't expecting.
But he is from this shul.
He didn't invite.
No, but he didn't invite those people.
No.
So they came, and all of a sudden,
You were there.
I was there at the beginning of it. Yeah.
I didn't announce.
So it was a bit of a
I didn't
balagan.
announce them electronic announcing.
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Did announce it?
I did not. They're purpose.
Oh.
That was
Jewish people find out these things.
No, I think it was random guests, random people. Anyways, the point is that we don't, you have to inform in order for us to prepare. And by the way, the place can discuss a shaila of gzela to show up to somebody simcha stam. You have people who, it depends. If you have a lot of chasas, they prepare a table specifically for people who don't have what to eat, people who eat. So that's a very big mitzvah. It's a very important thing, and you can come up, that's fine. But people who take advantage of that, and you have some people who think that a simcha is there, so they take the stuff. I sponsored a kiddush, what was it, 2 weeks ago, over from my father's yard. Someone came, he took half the stuff I brought, or a quarter of the stuff, it doesn't matter, and he took it. What are you doing? He's like, I'm saving it for Shalosh Shudas. What do you mean Shalosh Shudas?
Took it off to the side?
Yes.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Yes.
You call that gazelas, by the way?
Of course, it's stealing. It's a type of stealing that a Jewish conscience doesn't feel bad about. He doesn't. It's a type of stealing that he thinks is legal. He thinks it's okay. And anyway, let's continue. So you inform your host, you inform your family. You're out of the picture. You are out of this whole restriction. You can travel even until Shkia. Okay, you don't have the 48-minute limitation. So if you inform them, that's case number one. So this pretty much, especially in today's form of communication, covers almost everything. Number two, even if you didn't inform them for whatever reason, your phone broke, you don't know what to do. Let's say there's a case you can inform them, or you don't even know where you're going. You want to go somewhere for Shabbos. Stop. I don't know where I'm going to stop. A lot of people doing so. A lot of Bachram, they just show up here, and then last minute, from a sense, and then last minute you suddenly get phone calls. Oh, can you host this? So the question is, what they are doing according to Allah? They didn't let the host know. So the Alter Rebbe brings from previous poskim the following heter, that nowadays families are accustomed to cook a lot of food anyways because they expect extra guests to come. And therefore, we don't really have to worry so much anymore about it. Now, I don't know how much this dislocation applies in all areas. I guess it would depend. You have neighborhoods that there's never guests. Back in the day, it was very common for travelers to show up in a shul, and then they would designate, like what you do in Tzfat. Don't take that for granted. That doesn't happen in most places.
I'm not taking it for granted.
No, I'm just saying. It doesn't happen. You're living still like in the old school, but usually it doesn't happen in most communities. You don't have 10 people waiting in shul to be designated where they're going to go eat.
I always send the Bachram to the Breslev shul. It's a
They
big
have a big,
shul, and there's a lot of guys that always take people, So if I don't know, I have an eight, so what to do? Go there,
Right. But even that, in most shuls, I'm saying, you can look. Everyone has a place to eat, and everyone has a family that already came prepared. The bottom line is that back in the day, this is what was common.
When Shabbos comes in, people have a different cheshbon already. It's not the same cheshbon anymore.
When Shabbos comes in.
Once Shabbos comes in, they have the food is already ready.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
This is not the second one from the Chaber.
This is not from the Chaber. This is the Alter Rebbe's additional. Yes, this is the Alter Rebbe's additional heter that he gave.
The heter is that in the world we don't worry about enough food because everybody has enough food. Basically.
Yeah, that's like a justification, correct.
Mm-hmm.
But what about mashke? Maybe there's not enough mashke.
Mashke, right. Okay, the third exception is we read it inside the Mechaber, and the fourth also inside the Mechaber. That is, the third is if the area you're in right now, there's no food for you to eat. There's no kosher food. You're stuck somewhere. Or number four, you're in a place of danger. So then, of course, we said there's no limitations. You can travel. So bottom line, what would be, based on everything that we just said, the one case?
Wait, say that again. The danger.
Case of danger. Your car broke down in a neighborhood in Chicago. The closest place is another 40 minutes away.
So you can go over the time limit to get to this section. You escape the danger. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. And the no kosher food, now that brings on all sorts of other problems.
If you're near with no kosher food, let's say your flight got stuck somewhere. Okay? So you have a choice, either travel after Shabbos or stay here. I'm going to arrive before Shabbos. I can take another flight to nearby town and stay there for Shabbos. So that's a real halacha. If you can't inform anyone where you're going to be staying, and it's safe for you to stay where you are, then you can't go. But if there's no kosher food available, then you can travel.
You go on the limit in order to seek out kosher food.
Yeah.
You can go on. Okay.
So what's the one case after we went through all this that indeed there would be a
Still a restriction, yeah.
restriction?
Well, if you just go through all the heterim and say that
There is a case, and I'll tell you, it's actually quite a common case. A family is saying they rented a Tzimmer, they're going to a Tzimmer for Shabbos. Does it ever happen? It's your parnasa, right?
Part of it.
Part of it. Happens all the time. Right. So now, are you providing them meals, or are they cooking or bringing their own food?
Quite often in our case, they bring everything themselves.
So if they plan on cooking in their destination, so this is the case we're discussing, and there's no exception here. What are you going to say? You informed them? What do you mean inform them? You're not there yet. You haven't started cooking. Okay. What do you mean?
They're doing their own food.
Oh, 1 second. Let's say they're cooking there. They're baking challahs there. They're cooking there. Yeah. In a case if they're cooking there 100%, and often they do cook there, it's a big problem. You have to arrive. At least one person has to arrive before 4 hours and 48 minutes into the day. So you have to send somebody early in the morning. So what if you say check-in is only at 11? He has to be inside at 10:48.
But it's no problem if people go to Aralas and buy the food.
So this is a discussion in the Poskim. If we're lenient in a case that you're either bringing your own food with you, or you're going to be buying from a catering upon your arrival. The Eilas Tamid and others, Eilas Shabbos and others take a stringent approach, said no, the Chamed Alei Plug. They said, this is the law, you got to get to your destination by this time if you don't have a guest preparing food for you there. I don't care if you bring food with you, you're not bringing food with you, that's what you, so according to that stringency, there's an incentive, even if you bring your own food with you.
Have somebody come earlier to buy it.
Yeah, that's also true. Someone have come earlier, which is a good idea anyways,
right?
to do. But otherwise, if you are bringing your own food and push comes to shove, you could be lenient because in the end of the day, you have your own food and you don't have to worry about cooking it there.
It doesn't matter who that person is who does it for you, right? You know somebody. You say, go to the store, buy this for us. You know, doesn't have to be a connection to you.
Correct. Yeah, as long as you have someone worrying about your meal. Yeah.
Right, and that's another head basically. But if you bring your own cooked food, because people bring their own like raw chicken.
Correct. Well, so it's not cooked.
Raw chicken.
Yeah, they bring their own meat, but they
so it doesn't count.
But they're going to go shopping.
But another thing is the cloud simmers have to worry about. Another thing we're simmers worry about is how do they keep their kitchen kosher? If they're renting it to non-from people or Gentiles, how's your kitchen kosher? How are they going to cook? That's a separate issue. But assuming that everything's kosher, then yes, they have to arrive before 4 hours, 48 minutes, so they have enough time to cook. That's the one case that the Chacham Then so that's the heter. That's the heter that we're saying most places say.
It's cooked already.
Correct, because it's cooked already.
It's a practical matter. I guess technically the Zimmer owners would not be responsible, but it'd be a good idea if we would remind them, right? We're not responsible for them getting there on time, right? Are we?
It's
Because the avocado heter that you gave about Pesach only will go so long. My kids and my wife are going, no, we're making beds at 4 o'clock sometimes too.
Right. Listen, it's not your responsibility for the halachic religiosity and observance of your guests that come stay by your Tzemach.
Friendly reminder.
There's a lot of different. You're pretty good if you're asking that question. The other questions that the hotels ask, am I allowed to have a Jewish man with a Gentile woman stay in one of my hotel rooms? So you're doing well if that's your question. That's what you have to let them know. Yeah. You know. Bottom line is that it's not your responsibility.
First of all, if they're asking that question, they're on a pretty.
Oh, if they're asking you, then yes, if you should.
No, I'm saying if a hotel would ask, I don't believe
they're
any
from
hotels.
They're from hotels.
From hotels.
From hotels.
Okay.
They'll intervene in such a case. They'll try to intervene if they knew, or they try to.
Listen, first of all, we shouldn't think this stuff is out of the world. We live in a Western country, Western civilization, so these things are unacceptable. Saudi Arabia just now, as we speak, the last month, permitted husband and wife to sleep in the same hotel room. Husband and wife sleep in the same hotel room. You have to, according to Saudi Arabian law, you cannot rent a hotel room male and female unless you have a marriage certificate that has been notarized for Saudi Arabia.
Well,
otherwise, they will not give you.
Baruch Hashem.
So now they changed the law, and they said that what they're allowing now tourists. Only tourists, not locals. No, they have to bring a marriage certificate.
So locals cannot sleep together.
No, it's illegal.
Married.
Well, they'll stone them.
That's right.
Only for tourists.
Only for tourists. They just passed the law now, the last month.
the tourists willy-nilly, they can do what they want.
They're getting makeup.
Okay.
Wow.
They have a new reform imam that took over the rabbanos. Okay, last issue here in this halacha, and that is the issue that actually you first brought up, but it's not discussed at all in the Poskim here, but rather today's achrayim, and that is taking a form of transportation too late in the day that you may arrive on Shabbos. Obviously, that doesn't have to be written. You can't travel on Shabbos, so you have to make sure to get to your destination on time so you're not on Shabbos. That's simple common sense. So because of this, Chacham and Bereisha, you should always give yourself double the amount of time. Doesn't get a flat tire, you have this, you have that issue. Everyone who works in organizations like Yedidim and organizations like this, or the ones in the States, I forgot the corresponding name, but they have these different organizations that they basically help in different situations, including these. And they get phone calls every year of Shabbos from people, often from people who are, running last minute, and then something happens. I didn't know what happened. A person has to have, has to,
Little seichel.
to try to go as early as possible to get to your destination. Now, there's another issue that's discussed. What if I'm taking a cab? I'm taking a taxi. I'm taking, buses is more public. We'll discuss taxis first. Jewish driver. I'm taking a taxi 10 minutes before Shkia. Do you really think that this Jewish taxi driver is going to stop in the middle of the street as soon as it's Shkia and not travel anymore? He's going to go back. So now why was he traveling back on Shabbos? Because you took him 10 minutes before Shkia. Same thing with buses. Let's say this is a question was asked for bus traveling. Can you rent a bus, or can public transportation have buses that are going to run late in the day? If they arrive on time, I'm going to be home an hour before Shkia. That's fine. But he's from Jerusalem. He drove up to Tzfat. How long does it take to drive back? So we're causing him to drive on Shabbos.
But wait a second. There's two levels here. One is private or public.
Well,
in other words, if it's public, you don't have to make that cheshbon.
He's doing it anyways.
He's not doing it for you, Dafka. He's doing it for everybody.
I hear you. I hear you. Here's the question.
You can't be responsible.
No, if he's a guy, he's a guy.
No, if he's a Jew, we're talking
about. He's a Jew.
Yeah.
He's a Jew. So the truth is, though, that this question, first of all, there are Tzfat, as I'm sure you know, used to have a private bus company. Instead, there was no Nativity to your Jerusalem. It was private, completely private. And that was a type of case where they have to have a question. Can we have our Jewish drivers drive at that time if they're not from, and they may? I actually think they had from drivers, if I remember correctly. I don't remember. Maybe
some.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the question that comes up. Bottom line is that there's many Rabbanim came, they put out the kruzim, they put out proclamations that a person has to avoid doing so in order not to cause them to be Mechal Shabbos. So that's another reason why not to travel so late into the day. Okay. We're done with traveling.
If you take a cab driver, then it's clear it's because of you he was Mechal Shabbos.
Correct.
If you take a bus, it's not because of you.
A public transportation. Correct. It's on the schedule. He's traveling regardless of who goes on, who doesn't go on.
Who gets on the bus.
That's true. That is correct. It's also not exactly lifnei iver because I didn't tell him travel back. It's just, it's just better to avoid. In other words, like this. A lot of these cheshbonos of not causing people to be Chal Shabbos is not that I have a halachic responsibility of lifnei iver, which means don't cause a fellow Jew to transgress, has tremendous halachic limitations. It's not apply wherever you think it applies. It has to follow certain guidelines, and only then, that's why, as I said before, technically, a hotel owner doesn't have to inquire, are you married to this woman when you're staying in my room? He doesn't have to because I'm not telling them to do anything. It doesn't fall under. It doesn't fall under lifnei iver, but it's not halak. It's not, it doesn't sound good. It doesn't rest well. So this is one of those cases that it's not that there's an actual issur, but it's just something we want to encourage.
In the Baal Shem Tov stories, there was a story in the Baal Shem Tov that he came to a place with his wife.
Father of the Shpalazeda.
Right.
He came to the inn of the father of the Shpalazeda.
But because they didn't have any children, they made him sleep separately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was done back in the day,
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia style. Okay. Next, halacha, sif beis. Sif beis. Also, this next halacha now deals with a whole new subject. It's still part of the same chapter, 249. And this last halacha and the next two halachas are all part of the same subject, so it's going to be the last subject of the sim of 249. Laws relevant to Erev Shabbos. And that is regarding eating on Erev Shabbos. One of the favorite things we like doing on Erev Shabbos is to eat. What are some of the best ways that husbands can help on Erev Shabbos? Taste the food, right? Taste the food. Sometimes we taste a little bit too much of the food. So there's a joke that a wife asked her husband to help, so he left the house for 3 hours and he came back and started munching on the food. And she said to him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So he said, "How long do you want me to help for already? I've been out for 3 hours."
They're catering for Thursday night.
Catering Thursday night, right. Yeah, so that's already tasting the chon Thursday night. So, Asr Likvaya Be'erev Shabbos Sugo Mishta She'ein Ragol Yimecha. It is an absolute prohibition the sages made on Erev Shabbos for a person to establish a meal and a mishta that he's not accustomed to during the weekdays. Meaning, one thing is clear, an extraordinary type of lavish meal is forbidden to be had on Erev Shabbos anytime, starting from morning.
Morning?
Yeah, it's morning of Erev Shabbos.
So when Mizonos
anytime.
No, I said an
before
extra
Chatzos is
lavish.
all right?
No,
Lavish is
no,
a-
the whole Erev Shabbos. I said, no,
The
we
whole
said,
Erev Shabbos.
again, I said an extra lavish meal. I didn't say you can't have
Ah.
a meal. I said an extra
You can
lavish.
wash, but not the.
We said, it shouldn't, he said, any meal you're not used to eating during the weekday, b'yamei achol. For example, you usually have a few slices of bread, some tuna, a little bit of this. And now you're bringing, a 5-course meal you decided to make a birthday party, and you're having a 5-course meal on Erev Shabbos. So it doesn't matter what time you start. It's forbidden to be done. The Chachamim forbade it for the simple reason. What's the reason? As a person will not be able to honor Shabbos properly when the night meal comes in. He's going to still be full. We see this all the time on Yontif meals. How often we have a 2-day Yontif, especially if it's 3 days. By the time the next night meal comes, we're like, oh my gosh, another one. Yeah, so this is why the Chachamim said that simple, regular meals, yes. But big, fat meals, especially if it's mishta with drinking mashka, no good. Back in the day, people used to drink by all the meals. Drinking was part of the meals. Everyone had wine, and an extra meal had a lot of
drink what? Vodka or wine?
Wine. Well, usually wine, but in a place where, in a special meal, they would have a lot of wine, a lot of yash, a lot of whatever mashka they had. Then some places the wine was expensive, so they had other yash, whatever you can get your hands on. So this is saying this, you have a limitation. Now it says, even if it's an engagement party. Have a perfect date Friday morning. He's off from work. He's off from army. He's off from whatever. She's available, right? Friday is like an off day here in this. So we're going to make the engagement party on a Friday. So if you're serving at the engagement party a few cakes, a few cookies, a little bit of schnapps, no problem. It's not a meal. But if you're serving a gesunte meal, it's aser.
Gesunte meal including washing, you mean?
Pashtus, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, you have in wedding smorgasbords. That's not washing, but
that's stuffing.
That's a big meal. That's a big meal. So yeah,
I thought enough coming in Erev Shabbos was washing before Chatzos and after Chatzos.
We'll get to. So you are correct that there is also a restriction on a regular meal. But here we're talking about an extra big meal, lavish.
Right. Okay.
That has a restriction from the beginning of the day. It doesn't matter what time you start. You say, I'll start at 10 o'clock. No, it's no good. But in order so a person enters Shabbos hungry, so you eat the food that you eat the food on Shabbos with hunger. And this is also explained based on Kabbalah. Explained in Kabbalah that all in Maimer, in Torah, in Parashas Chayesar of the Alter Rebbe, and later discussed in other memoirs of the Rebbeim in greater length and depth, that every food contains 2 aspects. There's the pleasure of eating it, and there's the satiation that it provides you with. Food that you're satiated from but doesn't taste good is lacking. That's why often when you eat untasteful food, you don't feel so full. You feel like you need to eat more, feel like you didn't eat. While food that tastes very good, but you didn't eat enough calories, or you're not full. So each one has a different advantage over the other. And that's spiritually, the Alter Rebbe there explains that there's 2 different types of birurim that need to take place in a food. And one has to do with the taste of it, the pleasure of it, and the second has to do with the satiation from it. So on Shabbos, well, during the week we do a skafia, not on Shabbos.
Right.
On Shabbos, we want to draw down from the food, the kedusha of the food, just like a carbon. It's like we're eating carbon. On Shabbos, it says all the food, that's why there's no skafia in Shabbos. All the food is like a carbon. And it's like we're eating carbonis. And in order for us to properly receive from it, we need to be a kli. So if we're not hungry, if we don't have an appetite, that's also like our soul is not able to intake it. It's like trying to put a program into your system when another program's already there. It doesn't work. Right? So this is why a person, also spiritually, in order to make the effect for Shabbos, needs to get into Shabbos hungry. Just in case anyone is wondering, says the Mechaber, the entire day of Erev Shabbos is included in this prohibition. So it doesn't start at any specific time, it's the entire day. Says the Ramah, says the Ramah, this is all talking about a meal that you decided to do today, a party that you decided to throw on Friday. You didn't have to make the engagement party today. Make it yesterday. Make it on Thursday. Make it on Sunday. You're deciding. You're not allowed to. But if the date happened to fall, my son happened to be born on a Friday, so the bris is on a Friday. What are you going to tell me to do? Push off the meal? So says the Ramah that any seudah that's for an occasion that falls on that day, like a bris milah or a pidyon haben, then it's mutter to do that day, even though it's a lavish meal. And the reason is because it's considered a sudas mitzvah. So why should I need to abstain from one sudas mitzvah in order to eat another sudas mitzvah? They're both sudas mitzvahs. So there's no logic here to push one off because of the other. So therefore, it is permitted to eat a sudas mitzvah, to make a sudas mitzvah in Erev Shabbos, and that's why you're also allowed to have a wedding, a nesuin, on Erev Shabbos. So we'll discuss that. We're going to get into that here soon. And now the Mechaber discusses a regular.
It's an old custom to get married on Friday.
Right, we're going to discuss, we're going to go into that here inside. I'll try to discuss it more. To just snack on foods without having an actual suda, and further on filu suda sh'ragel b'chol, or even to eat a meal that you normally eat during the week. Kol hayei mutter, it's permitted the entire day, no restriction. The entire food restriction of eating is only by a lavish meal. A non-lavish meal, just having regular tuna sandwich, washing and bread and whatever, it's not a problem. The entire day is mutter. However, from the letter of the law, however, it is a mitzvah to abstain, not an obligation, but a mitzvah, to abstain from starting a regular, typical weekday meal, starting from 9 hours into the day, which basically is 3 zmanius hours before sunset. So now that Shkia is going to starting today, the Shkia here in Israel is, Shkia now is going to be 4:55. 4:55.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, right.
Candlelighting is 5:34.
4:55 is Shkia time approximately. So that means 3 zmanius hours now. We're pretty much a 60 hour. No, it's almost 60-minute hours now. Zmanius. The sunrise is at 5:30. No, sunrise is 5:50. Oh, it's almost exactly. Yeah, it's exactly 60 minutes. So that means you have for this coming Shabbos, it would be exactly 3 times 60 minutes, exactly 3 hours. So basically, you have to lechatchila not start a meal starting from already 1:50 p.m.
That's before Shkia.
3 hours before Shkia, yes. 1:50 p.m.
So in other words, you can wash even after chatzos as long as it's before 1:50.
Yes.
And
in the
I
summer,
remember learning in yeshiva, they told us not to that's also to wash from chatzos on.
I'm afraid to break it to you. It's I'm not saying who said what to you, but the information is inaccurate.
I'm not going to say the name, but
the information is inaccurate.
What?
We just read it.
So you can wash until what? Until what?
And 50.
Minadim, you can watch the whole day. First of all, to say that it's forbidden is the first inaccuracy. It's not forbidden. The Mechaber troubled himself, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, to
but
write.
then you won't have. If you wash an hour before Shabbos, you're not going to have an appetite.
I agree with you. You have a very good logic, but the question is, did the sages prohibit it? I agree with you. In theory.
Told them it's also.
But I'm very careful. I don't want, I'm very careful to follow the Mechaber's words. It's a mitzvah to avoid. Also, the Alter Rebbe and the Shulchan Aruch says the same thing.
A mitzvah to avoid.
It doesn't say
that's an interesting lesson.
Yeah.
What about a package?
Meaning, if a person's very hungry, something happens. My kid, he was doing jobs. He wasn't. We said from 3 hours before sunset.
So a bag of Doritos.
No, that's a snack. That's a very good question. We're going to discuss it. L'kvaya Sauda, it's a good question. What does that mean? We're going to learn over here. It means, coming up here, the next one.
It's a mitzvah, not
Good eyesight. You read it? 2020 used to be a I made it just small enough so nobody cheats. Have to be careful. Okay. But we're going to inside clarify everything, but this is so far what the Mechaber has told us. Okay? The next halacha the Mechaber writes, due to all the above, it is the practice of meticulous Jews to fast every Erev Shabbos in order so they come into Shabbos super hungry.
Well, what is the Anshe Ma'aseh?
Can do the intermittent fasting.
Anshe Ma'aseh means people who are very, very meticulous in their actions and they're super pious. Very pious. Today,
went to
someone
pious
is doing
yeshiva.
Huh?
He came from a super pious yeshiva, that's why he was telling me.
Today someone is fasting before Shabbos.
Right, but
Today
they make
someone is
machmir
doing-
based.
I don't know anyone
Could
that
be,
fasts
we
on
learned
Shabbos.
one thing and then the Malchuvas, everybody got into the.
From mitzvah to
What are you gonna
Asr.
You can't eat that.
It's a taiva, don't
10 hours. That's right. It grows from there. Keeps on
We
growing.
gotta rewind now.
Everybody used to fast.
So it's a very interesting question what you're asking, and I keep on trying to tell people that the Rebbe, we like thinking that the Rebbe and us are the same. So what the Rebbe does, we also do. We're exactly the same. And of course, the Tzemach taught us that we have no clue what a Rebbe is, we have no clue what a Tzedek is. The way they act is on a completely different wavelength than us. And don't try to copycat. This was a rule always in Lubavitch. Don't copycat the Rebbe. You cannot copycat. Today, it became, in many circles, it's become extinct, this rule. It's not a good thing. But one of the things the Rebbe did, the Rebbe's Shabbos was very different than our own. The Rebbe, first of all, the Rebbe practically fasted the whole week. He ate very, very little, like super little. The Rebbe ate during the week, not normal meals, not normal amounts, and that's number one. Number two, on Shabbos itself, the Rebbe didn't have lavish meals. The Rebbe didn't even have really hot food during the day. There was no blech, there was no electricity in the Rebbe's house. They didn't have anything on, and
So the Rebbe didn't either.
Correct. The Rebbe would have soup from a thermos, a little bit of soup from a thermos, and everything was pre-cooked and put in the oven. Nothing was left on. We don't know why, but this is the facts on the table. And the Rebbe ate very little. In fact, Shabbos day, there were times that the Rebbe didn't eat at all because of the Fabregan. The Rebbe didn't go home, so there was nothing to eat.
Kiddush, no? Kiddush?
I don't know. Yeah,
He made kiddush at the
right. Correct. It didn't have a meal.
He had mizonos. He didn't wash.
There were times. No. In general, the Rebbe would make kiddush and wash on the Mishnah in his own privacy of his room upstairs. But the Rebbe's Nasius, the gully was 40 years, so there's many years that things happen. So
a lot of times in the wintertime, the Fabrangans went.
So Rabbi Groner writes that there was a period of time that until they began arranging meals to bring meals from the Rebbe's house to 770, that the Rebbe did not eat on Shabbos.
Shabbos day.
Shabbos day, correct. So I don't know what. So you can ask, how is it mutter? How is it mutter to fast Shabbos day? We discussed it in the Sikha to Shabbos ago. We said how by
That's the avodah of the Rebbe.
It says a person's allowed to fast for a tainus chalayim. There are cases you're allowed to fast on Shabbos, but anyway, I don't know. But the point is that this is just a case example where when it comes to davening late, you're davening mincha 12 o'clock at night. So the Rebbe wants davening at 12 o'clock at night. But when it comes to Shabbos, you didn't have a huge, big, fat meal. Follow the Rebbe there too.
No chance.
Can't pick and choose. If you feel you're a Rebbe, do the Rebbe all the way. Okay, let's go now inside. This is the Mechaber. We're going to go now inside over here, the additions of the Achreinim, the Alter Rebbe, the Mishnah Berurah, and others regarding what we just discussed. So it splits into four cases, okay? Arranging a large feast, that's case A. Case B is a Sudas Mitzvah. Case 3 is eating a small, regular, typical weekday meal. And case 4 is snacking. Okay, so we're going to now summarize each one.
The typical small regular meal is a bread meal.
We're going to get yes. So a large feast, it's very simple. There's not a lot of details here. It's forbidden to have just a stam regular, not regular, but to decide to have a large feast on Erev Shabbos, even from the beginning of the day. It's forbidden to do so. Even starting Friday morning.
Unless
there's
the day happens to fall on a Sudas Mitzvah.
No, that's the next exception. That's Sudas Mitzvah. So case 2 is Sudas Mitzvah. Case 2. So if it's not a Sudas Mitzvah. If it's a Sudas Mitzvah, not just a Sudas Mitzvah, but a Sudas Mitzvah that happens to fall on that day, then it is permitted to have the meal on that day. As we said before, you don't push off one mitzvah because of another Sudas Mitzvah. However, there are some restrictions that the Magen Avraham and the Alter Rebbe and Mishnah Berurah all add to this, and that's as far. So let's say you have a pidyon a ben or a bris that falls on Friday. I had one for my son a few years back. So you have to try to follow the following restrictions. Number 1, a person should try to begin the meal before the 10th hour of the day. You should begin as early as possible, but at the very least, before the 10th hour of the day. That's number 1, yes. Number 2,
Which meal?
Sudas mitzvah, like a bris or pigeon aben. It's proper not to invite more than 10 additional guests than the necessary, like relatives and the moihil, etc. They don't count as the 10. But 10 extra, you shouldn't have more than 10 extra. It should just be 10 people in addition. Similar to the halacha by the 9 days. If you have a meat meal, you shouldn't invite more than 10. That's another restriction. So anyone who has to have a bris on Erev Shabbos, it's quite cheap because you have an excuse for not inviting the whole community. It says up to 10 guests, only up to 10 guests allowed. But if you have relatives, then it's all in addition.
I couldn't invite you.
So it's all in addition. Now what happens? The push comes to shove. The mile didn't show up till the mile started. Till everything started, it was already 3:00 in the afternoon. We want to know, should we sit down now and have the bris milah meal? The answer is yes. And even if it means you're not going to be able to eat the Friday night meal because you're all stuffed, don't worry about it. Eat 2 meals the next day. Make it up.
Can't be mitzvah fit to the Friday night meal?
You could, yes. You do Puris Makadosh. You could, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go through a list of different meals of which this is and the status of having. So bris milah we already stated. If the boy was born on Friday, then obviously it takes place on Friday. Even if he wasn't born on Friday, but it was nidche, and this is the first day that he's healthy enough to have the bris milah done, then it's still considered that day because it's forbidden in the Torah to push off even 1 day. I'll just mention that this is according to our custom, the custom of Ashkenazim, but many Sephardim and some Ashkenazi communities never do a pushed off bris on Thursday or Friday, so there will never be a
Thursday
bris.
either?
Correct, not even Thursday. It's funny because I had a relative.
That's according to the Ben Ish Chai?
Yes, the Ben Ish Chai also holds that opinion, but it's according to the Rashdam. It's a very early Paisik from Algiers. Sephardi Paisik from Algiers. It's brought in the Chreinim, but we don't rule that way, but they do. So what's interesting is that the famous there's a famous Maya in Crown Heights. What's his name? Shane, Rabbi Shane. So I had a case where somebody called me from Crown Heights and said, my child's bris has been pushed off because of illness, and the first opportunity of doing it is it was either Thursday or Friday, I don't remember, one of the 2 days, and Rabbi Shane said that we don't do it on Thursday or Friday. So I'm like, I've never heard of such a thing in Lubavitch. I know there's some Polish juries that do that, and I knew that Rabbi Shane has Polish roots, so it could be that the bottom line is that I verified it through Moyelim of Anash, like Rav Landau, Rav Eli Landau's
no such thing.
No such thing. It's a chiyuv to get a bris on that day. So then he had the bris on that day.
First possible day, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Except Shabbos.
Except Shabbos, okay.
What do they say? They say like this, very simple, that if you do the bris on the same, why can't you do it on Shabbos? First possible day, do it on Shabbos, first possible day, because Shabbos, you only push off Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, you only push off Shabbos when the actual 8th day falls on it. Once past the 8th day, then you can no longer push off the laws of Shabbos. So here too, you're going to do the bris on Thursday or Fridays. The male is going to have to come on Shabbos and do malacha to take care of the child.
That's why they do it. That's why they avoid it.
I'll give you another case. I once had a male come to me on Shabbos, all frantic. I'm like, what's going on? Talk to me. What's happening? And he tells me that he did a bris on Thursday or Friday, and basically he got a message on his phone on Shabbos saying that the kid's bleeding profusely from his area. And so normally you say, okay, take your kid to the doctor, take your kid to the hospital. Like, what do you want from me? Go to the hospital. But this was a case where there was something that he couldn't be discovered that he did this bris. I don't remember the details. Bottom line, I don't know, was it legally with proper paperwork? It's like a surgery, so you can't just do whatever you want. So basically, he was frantic, and he asked me, can he travel? Or can he take his car and travel to the boy in order to deal with him so the boy doesn't have to go to the hospital and doesn't have to be reported? So I answered him, I told him, so that's just a case example.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes pikuach nefesh, because you did the bris before Shabbos, you now have to be mechal Shabbos.
Right.
So I answered him like this, that in the laws of pikuach nefesh, it doesn't say that only a hospital is allowed to treat the patient. Any Jew who's able to treat him, it's pikuach nefesh, especially you're the male, you dealt with it, you know what to do with the situation. You are, if you want to, you're allowed to go.
Wow. So go him the way he went. It's like a hospital, going to a hospital, basically.
Yeah. He's like a doctor.
It's the same thing.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's regarding a bris milah. A wedding feast. So interestingly, a wedding, obviously you can choose to schedule whenever you want, but nonetheless the halacha is that a wedding may be scheduled for Shabbos, and you are allowed to celebrate the Sudas mitzvah that day following the chuppah.
At any hour.
Before Shabbos.
Yes, correct, before Shabbos. Now, back in the day, what it used to be is like this. They used to have weddings on Erev Shabbos. They used to purposely have weddings on Shabbos. In fact, the minhag was to make weddings on Erev Shabbos. This was minhag Ashkenaz for many generations, for the last, I don't know, maybe 70 years since the Holocaust has become extinct. Exactly. Exactly.
Because you can't invite that many people.
No, because you make it on your Friday night meal.
Yeah, you join the Friday night meal, which the mitzvah also, you don't have to pay for a band. But back then, they used to have a Geisha band. You don't need a photographer, you have a Geisha band. They would have a Geisha
But you
band.
just made clear that this is not done on Shabbos. It's Erev. It's the daytime before it becomes Shabbos.
No, one second.
The ceremony is.
If you
but
can
not the
make
Suda.
this, if you can make this, no, here it's saying that minadin, you can even make the Suda on Erev Shabbos. And all weddings that I've been to that have taken place on Erev Shabbos, they also did the Suda on Erev Shabbos. But I'm saying, I'm talking about history, what was done in previous times. Previous times they did the wedding right before. In fact, we have a number of halachas. We have an Hilchos Halakas Neres. We have an Hilchos Halakas Neres that Alter Rebbe brings. And if the wife is going to a chuppah before Shkia, that's how he writes it. It was normal. They did the chuppah not at 10 o'clock in the morning. They did the chuppah at 3:30 in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they did the chuppah. And then they would do the chuppah. They would daven Ma'ariv, the big happy Kabbalah Shabbos from the Chassan and Kala. I think even Fiddler on the Roof. I think there was Erev Shabbos. I have to go back to that.
Rabbi Shane's daughter got married here on Erev Shabbos.
Oh, really?
And they went right into Shabbos. They did the meal Friday night.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful. I think it's very beautiful.
It's allowed.
It's a very beautiful thing.
Still allowed.
Not only is it allowed, it was
very
that's
high.
what was done. That was the minhag of back in the day. A lot of the Rabbeim, by the way, got married Erev Shabbos as well.
Machal Shabbos, that's why people don't do it.
Well, one of the main reasons because it causes people to do Chilul Shabbos if you have non-religious guests that are going to come. But assuming that that's not the case, and there's no worry of Chilul Shabbos, then it's definitely financially stable to do that. It's a better idea, and it's mutter. The bottom line is that it's mutter to be done.
Wow.
Now you may ask, we said before a rule. When it falls on Erev Shabbos, you can do it. You can't decide to make it. So why by a wedding is it different? The Chum did not want a person to delay the mitzvah puravu even one day. So we're going to say push it off to Sunday? No. So he said do it the earliest opportunity, even Friday. There was a couple that I made a shidduch for, a student of mine. I made a shidduch for him. He got married. He's now living in Jerusalem. He got married. He decided to have his wedding here of Shabbos in Crown Heights. It was very rare because usually 99% of weddings that are, Bacher, Basula, don't take place in Erev Shabbos. More second weddings of Exchange, but not Tzedek Rishon. And so it was a very rare event that had an Erev Shabbos wedding. And basically, there was a whole story of how, as he was going into the door of 770, a chassid who was from out of town, an older chassid in his 70s or 80s, asked what's going on. And he says, my chuppah is taking place in about an hour right over here outside. So he's like, that's so interesting. And he said, basically, I don't remember the details. Bottom line is that he gave him $1 of the Rebbe that the Rebbe gave him for his wedding that took place on Erev Shabbos. And there was some other detail there. A very fascinating story. I don't remember but basically he was saying how the Rebbe encouraged him to do it on Erev Shabbos, his wedding.
The original, when you came into this halacha here,
That
you
was
originally
70
talked about the
years ago.
scenario. You originally talked about the scenario of a chuppah and a meal before Shabbos came in. That's allowed. A meal.
Yes, and certainly a chuppah and a wedding and a meal Friday night is allowed.
What about before Friday night?
Correct, allowed.
That's allowed also, right? You strive to have it before the beginning of the night.
Yeah, follow all the rules, and then you
Still
should.
follow.
Yeah, and then the chatchila then went, but the 10-person rule is kind of difficult. You can't have either wedding with 10 people. A wedding
So
with
if we
10
want to
people.
have change our thing to next Friday, it has to be before 1:50.
Right, the chatchila. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, another case. Well, Pidyon Aben is right. If it falls, the 31st day falls on Friday, so that's when it's set for. If it's taking place past that day, the Alter Rebbe says, let's say it's a nidche, for whatever reason we didn't do it, it didn't take place, then in such a case, a person cannot do the meal on Erev Shabbos. He's going to have to do it, push off the meal another time. So you have the pigeon on Friday, but you do the meal another time. Erev Yontif. Here's a very common scenario that people don't always pay attention to, and that is when Shabbos is Erev Yontif. Erev Yontif falls on Shabbos, which we had this year by Shavuos. This year Shavuos fell on Motzei Shabbos, so Erev Shabbos was Shabbos was Erev Yontif. The Shabbos meal, we finished davening here at 1 o'clock. We're home at 1 o'clock. If, assuming, let's say, the third hour of the before Shkia is at 3 o'clock, it means we have to begin our Shabbos meal before 3 o'clock. Why? Because Friday night is Sudas Mitzvah. Even though also your Shabbos meal is a Sudas Mitzvah, when we say we don't push off one Sudas Mitzvah because of another, nonetheless, the Chatchila has brought down that a person has to start his Shabbos meal prior to the 10th hour of the day, and this is why also this year, when we had Pesach went straight into Shabbos this year, this last day of Pesach, and we had the Shiur Pesach was Erev Shabbos. You were supposed to start your Sudas Mashiach, and that's why you published it in your email, that to start it before the third hour of the day. That's the reason why we wrote that.
Right.
In order to eat your Friday night meal with Te'avim. Same thing applies in the opposite case. If Yom Tov falls on Erev Shabbos, you're going straight from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and so to there you should begin your Yom Tov meal before the 10th hour of the day. And furthermore, this applies every Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz, where they have 2 days. The first day of Yom Tov, you're supposed to start your meal before the 10th hour of the day, because they have another night meal. And we say this all the time: if you eat your Yom Tov meal too late, you're not going to have any appetite to eat the night meal. Now, Purim is where things change a little bit, and this is probably where a lot of confusion about your chatzais. By Purim, we have a huge, if Purim falls on Erev Shabbos, we have a huge, which we've had a few times. And we have a huge meal, of course, with mashka, so it's a real sudas mishta, kapshuta, as it was done back in the day. When are you supposed to have your meal? So, lichatchila, in such a case, the meal is to take place in the morning. And meaning that even though generally we say before the 10th hour of the day, by Purim you have till Chatzais, l'chatchila, you should start before Chatzais. If you're not able to do before Chatzais, then you can do until the 10th hour of the day. If you can't do the 10th hour of the day, then you can even do in the afternoon and do Paris Mapo Makadesh. This emergence will pick up from here next week.
Well, most of the Sephardim,